what I'm going to do, and I'm going to end off here, I'm going to look at the theories, the references, the claims that Muslims make all the time
Mm.
for Mecca, saying, yes, Mecca did exist. And there are reference after reference after reference. I get this all the time from Muslims. Muslims say, yes, there are four major claims for Mecca in the 7th century. And so I want to respond and debunk every one of them real quickly, okay? Because these are
All
the
right.
ones I'm going
Okay.
to get.
So,
Here you have the
oh, okay.
first claim. It's called the Samaritan Asatir from 200 BC, the Samaritan Asatir. Now let's go and see what it says. Well, according to the Samaritan Asatir, it says this: all the sons of Nebaioth reigned from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates, and they built Mecca. Mecca.
Wow.
Okay, boom. Oh, looks like this is Mecca. They found Mecca in 200 BC in this Asatir. Moses
Mm.
Gaster, a British rabbi and Orientalist in 1927, believed that the Asatir was archaic, reflecting an early stage in Samaritan thought and literature, which the Samaritans of his time could no longer fully interpret. Therefore he put forth the date of no later than 200 BC. So this comes from
Okay.
1927 by a British rabbi and Orientalist named Dr. Moses Gaster.
Mm.
Morris, Ian D. Morris is the man who really has debunked this really quickly. Ian D. Morris, and I give credit for everything I'm going to be doing now is from Ian D. Morris, who's done some
Okay.
great work up on the internet. You can see his material. He confronts this date, suggesting that the authors lived under Muslim rule, as it includes conversations with Muslims as well as Jewish scholarship. Now,
Mm.
two specialists, Zaev Ben Hayam and Christophe Bernard, proposed a range of dates for the Asatir from the late 10th century to the end of the 11th century AD.
Oh my.
So they're saying,
Oh
hold on,
my.
how can you be talking about a Muslim rule and having conversations with Muslims and Jewish scholars unless there were Muslims around? There were no Muslims in
Mm-hmm.
200 BC. The word Muslim didn't even exist that early. So
Mm.
it's obviously that this Asatir was not written in 200 BC, like this Moses Gaster suggested. This was probably written in the 10th or 11th century, just because of the internal content that's there. The Asatir is therefore not pre-Islamic reference to Mecca. It's simply much too late to be pre-Islamic. What about
Mm.
Diodorus? This is probably the bigger one. This is the one that most people point to. There are two ones that are most bigger, of this one and Macoraba. Let's look at Diodorus's reference to Mecca. Edward Gibbon in 1788, in his book called The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Volume 5, states that Diodorus referenced Mecca in the 1st century writing. That's 1st century BC writing, okay?
Okay. All right.
Now, Diodorus is well known. He was a scholar and a historian writing in the 1st century BC. No one doubts that. No one doubts that. But he was quoting a man named Agatharchides. And Agatharchides was writing in the 2nd century BC. And he says
Mm.
this. He refers to a very sacred temple has been established there, which is highly revered by all the Arabs. And it's that
Mm.
that reference to sacred temple and all the Arabs, which Muslims like to point out. Now, to
Mm-hmm.
understand what Diodorus and Agatharchides are referring to, you need to go back to when this all happened. You need to go back to the 3rd century BC. You need to go to Ptolemy II in Philadelphia. He is the king at that time in Egypt, and he has sent a one of his generals called Ariston to check out the Gulf of Aqaba. He wants to go and have a military expedition in the Gulf of Aqaba. But before he goes there, he wants to check out the location, the land, to see if it could accommodate large armies, where the mountains were, where the best place to get there, where the best place for encampments. So Ariston makes this trip to the Gulf of Aqaba. And it's his description that Agatharchides picks up in the 2nd century BC and refers to.
Mm.
But he didn't, when you just quote a very sacred temple has been established there, which is highly revered by Arab, if you're just going to quote that bit,
Mm-hmm.
quote the rest of what he said, because then he gives him something
Exactly.
more specific. He says it's a bay or gulf, which is known as Gulpas, somewhere south of the Gulf of Aqaba that runs inland about 500 stadia. Now, stadia means the length of a stadium that they used at
Okay.
that time. And if you look at 500 stadia, that would be about 90 kilometers, all right, or 60
Mm-hmm.
miles. And therefore, it's in the Gulf of Aqaba. And then he goes on and says the mouth is too craggy for ships to traverse. So it's a place that's too craggy that ships cannot go. So there's a temple. Note, it doesn't say Kaaba, it just says temple, which was revered by all the Arabs. And that's why Muslims claim that this has to be Mecca. Well, let's look at the mouth of Aqaba. There's the Gulf of Aqaba. This is what Agatharchides temple for all Arabs is referring to. There's the Gulf of Aqaba. Located 90 kilometers from the mouth, from the Hieron Island is what he wants. So there's the Hieron Island. 90 kilometers would be about there, right? That's what it's pointing to. So what is there that's 90 kilometers from Hieron, from the mouth of the Aqaba? Well, Wadi Ainuna is there. Wadi Ainuna. What is Wadi Ainuna? Wadi Ainuna is well known. There is a temple at Wadi Ainuna. This makes absolute sense. This is absolutely historical. But where is Wadi Ainuna? Well, take a look at it. Let's look back here. Let's pull back. Where is Wadi Ainuna in relation to Mecca? Well, when you go back and you look at all the Mecca, you know that reference after reference of Gulf of Aqaba, Tabuk, Medina, Saleh, Khaybar, and Yathrib are well known in the ancient days, especially at the 3rd century BC. What's fascinating is this Wadi Ainuna is there. Look where Wadi Ainuna is. It was well known then as well. Even today, it's still well known. In the 3rd to 1st century BC, the only known Arabs would have lived up north around the area of the Gulf of Aqaba. They didn't know anything further south than that. We'll get to that. Hold on to that idea. But Mecca was not known at all back then, as it did not exist. Look where Mecca is. Look how far away. So, how far is Wadi Ainuna from Mecca? 962 kilometers.
Oh my.
600 miles away. Ooh,
Oh my.
Haven't we heard this before? Isn't this the same thing we got earlier with Petra? Petra is just north of this place here. That is 10 times further than the 90 kilometers Agatharchides and Diodorus are referring to, proving that they were not referring to Mecca at all. Not at all. What about this phrase, highly revered by all Arabs, that they keep on talking about? It's highly revered by all Arabs, therefore it must be Mecca. Wouldn't that also include the Arabs of the Hijaz and further south? No. Take a look at a map. This is a map of the Roman Empire, the Roman era. Look and see how much they owned. And look especially at the green area called Arabia Petraea on the right side at the bottom. See that? That is the Arabia they know. They never went. Look at it. Everything else is white because it was all barren. It was all barbaric. They didn't go outside of that area because that was not what their interests were. So when they say all the Arabs, they're talking about Arabia Petraea, that part in the green. And this map was made in 125 AD. So this is another 2 centuries later. There simply were not any Arabs further south than Arabia Petraea from their standpoint. And we're looking at their comments. We're looking at their phraseology. All the Arabs went to that temple because that was the only Arabs they knew. And that was the only temple that existed at that time. So this has nothing to do with Mecca. All the Arabs that Agatharchides and Diodorus knew were only up north. Okay? Now, what about Pliny the Elder's Dabanegoris regio from 79 AD? For the students of ancient Arabia, Pliny the Elder, who died in 79, is indispensable. Pliny's description of the Arabian Peninsula is cogent and sometimes corroborated by other ancient writers. Now, there's no reason to think that Pliny himself ever did field work in Arabia. He relied on earlier studies, often citing the popular works of Juba II, who was a Mauritanian living in Rome, who wrote about the northern Arabian Peninsula. Among the places in Juba's description of Arabia is Dabanegoris regio, or the region of Dabanegoris, where he writes, after the Dogs River, according to Juba, there is the Taludaid tribe, the Dabanegoris district, Mount Orsa with its harbor. That's all he says, right? In 1970, the geographer Hermann von Wissmann proposed that this was the territory belonging to the Quraysh, as well as Mecca and its environs. Dabanegoris would then mean literally that which belongs to the sons of Quraysh. Now, therefore, this must be Mecca because the Quraysh were in Mecca. Ian Morris debunks this very quickly. And this is what he says. Wisman reads Koresh into Dabanegoris, but that oris is a declension, not an integral part of the root word. If Dabanegoris, regio, is the region of Dabanegoris, there is no room left for the Koresh. Patricia Crone says very clearly the term son of Koresh, Banu Koresh, is a bit faulty. Koresh is the name of the tribe, not a patriarch within the tribe. So the patronymic name sons of Koresh would have made little sense to anyone. Geographically speaking, however, take a look. Pliny cited Juba, and Juba follows the Arabian coast from Charax, which is just north of what is today Basra in Iraq, down the Persian Gulf where those arrows are going, around Oman, dropping the name Dabanegoris regio along the way. Well, do you see a problem with that? Even if you're going to say that this is Mecca, look and see where it's placed. It's on the wrong side of Arabia. It's on over by the Persian Gulf, hundreds of miles away.
Wow.
Now, even if you want to impose the word Koresh onto the word Dabanegoris, I don't know how you can, but if you wanted to, you see, this is absolutely idiotic because you've got to read the rest of what the Juba was saying. Juba was saying that they would come down with the trade from what is Khaybar today. That's the Iraqi Khaybar, not the Saudi Arabian Khaybar. There are two Khaybars. This is the Iraqi Khaybar. Sharax is its better name. And you follow those red arrows along past Qatar, over the United Arab Emirates, over to what is today Oman. That would be Oman. That is hundreds of miles away, possibly even thousands. I'm not done a reference, probably maybe thousands. It is evident that Dabanegoris regio has nothing to do with the Koresh. And even if it did, the region could not include Mecca, as it is on the eastern coast of Arabia and not the western coast. It's on the wrong side of Arabia. Now, here's the big one. This is the one that everybody believes. And Korede, you probably come across this one as well. Macoraba. Macoraba must be Mecca. From the 2nd century AD, Ptolemy, you don't pronounce his first letter, P. Just say Ptolemy. But I see it there. It's like Fander. Fander, the name that I call my YouTube site, named after Dr. Carl Fander.
Yeah.
It's a German spelling, but there is a P. There's a Fander. You're supposed to say Fander, so I say Ptolemy. So let's just go with Ptolemy. There's Macoraba. Claudius Ptolemy, a Greek writer and geographer from Alexandria in Egypt, wrote a guide to geography between 141 and 147 AD. In it, he gave coordinates for a place called Macoraba, 73 by 20 by 22. Notice Ptolemy's map. Now, that's a map that has been recreated from his drawings. So that's what people look like today of what he was trying to describe. So that they call it the Ptolemy's map on the right. Macoraba is southeast of Yathrib. Look where he places Macoraba. See Yathrib up there? Macoraba is southeast of it, right? What's more, Mecca is southwest of Yathrib. So he's got it in the wrong place to begin with. Okay? If Macoraba is Mecca, then he misplaced it. Well, hold on a minute. So why do we think Macoraba is Mecca? Well, the reason why is because you need to go back to Europe and you need to see where Macoraba was chosen. Why Muslims are using it today is because of the Europeans. This has nothing to do with Muslims or Islam. It's the Europeans who've decided this is Mecca. And you need to go back to this guy named Samuel Bocard, a French historian, in 1651. So we're talking about the 17th century. Yeah, we're talking over 350 years ago. He claimed that Macoraba from Ptolemy must be Mecca. Johann Heinrich Zedler in 1739 included this supposed reference to Mecca by Ptolemy in his German encyclopedia. Then in 1799, Konrad Manner, the Prussian historian, suggested that the word Macoraba meant a temple. In 1846, then, the 19th century, the German scholar Albert Forbiger referenced Macoraba as Mecca in his encyclopedia, which canonized the idea for most Europeans ever since. And then in 1890, Edward Gasser suggested that the word Macoraba was a Southern Arabian word for mihrab, which then meant a place of worship. Consequently, since then, most every Western scholar now believes Macoraba is Mecca. That's why this has come out of Europe. This has nothing to do with Islam or Muslims. And this is why, you know, I
Mm.
love it because it shows that we in the West are just as stupid as many of the Muslims are, claim we are. Listen, this I love picking. I love finding any error in European geography. So we're going to show you what's the problem with this. Dan Gibson found a problem immediately. Gibson noticed that there was a number of city locations on Ptolemy's map which are well known today. Ptolemy correctly identifies the Yemeni ports of Musa and Aden, or Emporia Arabia as it was known, and Khane. This provides us with 4 rivers and 3 coastal cities that we can identify today, according to his writings. Gibson matched the towns and cities with the rivers, which still exist today, and overlaid them on a map at right. So there's what he came up with. And Macoraba and would have been placed right there. But you see a problem there. Look at where some of the cities land. Unfortunately, if you put it on a modern day map, because remember the map that Pliny had was all off skew. It was complete. You can tell he did not look from a satellite. He did not have satellite to get the right dimensions. So everything was all skewed out of proportion. So if you take those same cities from his map and put them on a modern day map, this is what you get. Unfortunately, this puts some of the cities into the Arabian Sea, which would not be exactly healthy for the inhabitants. They wouldn't live very long if that's where they were located. You see a problem
Exactly.
there.
Yeah, I can see that.
So Gibson found a solution. He noticed that Ptolemy's rivers, the location on the rivers today. So he just took the rivers that are well known today, and then he looked and showed where they were in relation to those rivers. And then he said, well, let's put those and let's correct those places. And then you notice what you put when you correct them according to the rivers, then you get them all on land. The problem that Ptolemy had is that he never went into the interior. He never traveled in the interior because it was all desert. Therefore, he did not know how large the desert was. He had no idea just how large it was. And that's why he put all these places that were actually just inland from the shore, he put them way up north, thinking that they were up north because that's as far as he traveled. No, there were thousands of miles of desert up there that was unaccounted for. And that's why when you look at them, almost all these places are what we know today as Yemen and Oman. By shrinking Ptolemy's map southward to accommodate the desert, many of the locations suddenly fit. Macoraba then became what we do today know as Al-Mahabisha. Mahabisha has, and that's what happens. The names of places change over time. It's nothing more than a little hamlet. And that's where it's located today. Macoraba was not only an interior settlement of Arabia, but it turned out to be only a small hamlet situated in the Hadramaut area of Arabia, and it had nothing to do with Mecca and nothing to do with the Kaaba. So, Patricia Crone, therefore, concludes in her bestseller, Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam, devoted a number of pages arguing against the supposed evidence for Macoraba. She noted that it was situated in the wrong place, but most importantly, the word Macoraba and Mecca are not the same word in Arabic. They aren't even pronounced the same way. They only enjoy the first letter, nothing more. She concluded the plain truth is that the name of Macoraba has nothing to do with that of Mecca, and that the location indicated by Ptolemy for Macoraba in no way dictates identification of the two. Ian D. Morris, the expert on these previous names of Mecca, says this: etymologically, Macoraba has many problems. It is telling that after 350 years of experimentation, we have a handful of incompatible etymologies, none of which quite fits. It is also telling that 5 very different interpretations have resorted to languages that flourished outside ancient Mecca: Aramaic from Sprenger, Hebrew from Bokhar and Dazi, and Old South Arabian from Glasser and Ali. Why then is there still a consensus that Macoraba is Mecca? The idea was first noted in the 17th century. In the 18th century, it found its way into the encyclopedias, and in the 19th, it was fairly common knowledge among Orientalists. Konrad Manet helped to popularize the idea, but it was probably Albert Forbiger entry in Pauli's encyclopedia that assured its place in the canon of Orientalist thought. It is not impossible, he concludes, that Mecca is Macoraba, but right now, given the state of the field, there is no rigorous way to bridge the two names. It is easier to conclude that they are different places. Patricia Crone seems to be vindicated.
Wow.
Now I'm going to come to my conclusions. So, why the historical critique? The geographical difficulties are just too great to ignore. The 3 major civilizations purportedly around Mecca are 600 miles too far north. There are no maps from the 6th or 7th centuries with Mecca on it. Montgomery Watt's trade route theory has been completely debunked by Patricia Crone. There are numerous other problems with Mecca, such as it is only referred to once in the entire Quran. The tradition suggests there was much vegetation in Mecca when there was little to none. The earliest reference to Mecca is 741, which places it in southern Turkey, much too far north. And it looks like the Muslims in Arabia are now trying to cover up any archaeological evidence, possibly because they have heard what we now know. And every claim for 7th century Mecca or earlier have been debunked. I'll end my
Wow.
PowerPoint there. Back to you. And can you see, if you're going to say that Mecca is where it existed in the 7th century, you're going to have to prove it. And as I've said, Korede, over and over again, please don't waste my time with the 9th and 10th century. I've already thrown them out. I don't care about this book anymore. This is nothing more than fiction. Show me evidence for Mecca in the 7th century. That's all I want to hear. Give me something from the 7th century or earlier. But don't waste my time with the 9th and 10th century anymore. Okay, back to you.
All right, Dr. J. Smith, and that's a huge ride. I mean, this is actually mind-blowing. And as we're making the presentation, one of the things that comes to my mind is, why is an issue like this not very popular among the Muslims? Or why are they not really taking it very serious? I mean, I've seen Muslims debate a lot of topics. I've seen them giving speech topic, but rarely do they talk about this. Now, I was listening to and one of these mufti, I can't remember his name now. It's a very popular mufti on YouTube. I don't know why I should forget his name now. Okay, yeah, that's Mufti Abu Layth. And he was talking about some of these things that you have to say concerning Petra, Mecca, and the rest. And he said that, yeah, that some of the arguments that you give, some of them were quite convincing. That they find some of them quite convincing. But then what stands out to me is that, why is this not enjoying a kind of widespread debate, discussions among the Muslims? Why are they not really seeing this as something very important? And because this actually goes to the very core, the very foundation of Islam. If the Mecca of Islam is actually wrong, then the whole thing is wrong. All right. So why are they not taking it very seriously? This is actually one question.
You just answered your question.
That
you've given the question, you answered it all in one breath. I don't have to say a thing. You just answered it. What you have just said, you've got, and I hope the Muslims who are listening pick this up. What you have just done, Korede, you've asked the question, why aren't they taking it seriously, since it destroys everything about Islam? Why aren't they taking it seriously? Bingo. If you were a Muslim, would you want to hear this, what I've just said today? No.
Exactly. In fact, I want to listen to you. I want to listen to you, but then listening to all of the things that you've said so far, it's really, really damaging. I mean, I would want to think, what is that going on? What exactly can I know about Islam? If the very thing that I think I could be very sure of, which is actually Mecca, not really is not coming through. I get my hands on it to know that this is actually truth about Mecca. Then how many more things are we getting wrong? How many more things are we not getting right? So it's actually a troubling thing for me. If I were a Muslim, it's going to be really troubling for me. And that's the reason why I actually want the Muslims to listen to this. And I hope that they will begin to take this, because this actually needs attention. I want the Muslims to respond to this. Really want them to respond to this.